Hi, everyone. I am so sorry I couldn't be there. And I'm not apologizing just because I'm Canadian. I'm apologizing because I'm in an airplane right now on my way to Toronto for some in person meetings we do every quarter with our accounting firm leadership team. I'm sneaking this message in post production. But if there's any way that there's good internet on the plane while this is playing, I'm going to sneak in the chat and see if we can answer questions along the way. So Trent asked me if I could record this like weeks ago, but I was like, nope, because this session is all about automation and AI updates for accountants. And it seems like everything rolls out every 6 hours when it comes to this type of news. So I wanted to leave it until as far as I possibly can. So I'm actually recording this from Spain, of all places, Sunday night, October 19th, just so I could squeeze in as much information as possible. If we haven't met, my name is Chad Davis. I own a firm in Canada called Live CA. And if it's anything like what you're going through, owning that for the last 13 years has been a whirlwind of really high highs and really low lows. And if you are a firm owner right now, kudos to you. There's a lot of stress put on your shoulders. And if you're working for a firm, awesome that you're here because it shows that they care about you and they're not just putting their head in the sand hoping that this kind of stuff doesn't affect them. Okay, so why is a random accounting firm owner from Canada presenting to a group of highly intelligent accounting folks who honestly have led the charge for decades? I remember when we were first starting, I looked up to everyone from Australia and New Zealand because it felt like you had it figured out back in 2010. So the irony is not lost here. I think Trent wanted to show a bit more of a North American focus of what's happening over here. So today's session is all about what's happening in the AI and automation space in Canada and the United States. And on a more familiar level, how are the main frontier AI models and their new releases affecting everyone globally? Now, I also want to say we have 45 minutes today and we have a lot of updates to go through. Every month, I post updates of what's happened inside of a little online group we have called Automation Town. And what I'm going to do today is go through the September and October updates as quickly as possible. So it's a bit like a news feed, but if the news was only for accounting, AI, and automation work, and the host was an accountant. And look, I should probably say this out loud too. I actually don't think that automation and AI is the thing that's going to make your firm work. It certainly isn't the thing that saved our firm. What saved our firm was picking a business model, changing our pricing methods, optimizing the client base, creating a mechanism for annual renewals to happen quite easily, and to change our entire compensation philosophy for the firm to align with better retention rates and giving people an opportunity to have a life outside of work. And that is the goal of our firm, to be able to do meaningful work and have a meaningful life outside of it. But automation and AI stuff is kind of fun. So let's get into it. If we look at this tool, which was completely vibe coded inside of Lovable months ago, I'll go over here and select October. So October, there's been 20 updates in about 19 days over 12 companies. And if I add in September, we've got 69 updates over 36 companies. So that's a lot to go through. And what I've found is sometimes instead of going company by company on the left, it's nice to go through the list in order of most recent to the oldest. Let's just start and see where this goes. All right. The very first update is from Google. Now, AI mode has been the SEO killer for accounting firms ever since it came out back in May of 2025. To be honest, we averaged about 10,000 website views every single month. Now, we're lucky if we get between 1 and 2,000, but we're getting a whole bunch more leads through ChatGPT. So I honestly don't care right now, but I know that it is eating traffic. So there's a whole other conversation about how to optimize your website for LLMs and how to do that. But this news item is about AI mode. So 40 additional countries, including Australia, on October 8th, got access to Google's AI mode. And if you haven't seen that yet, if you go to Google and type, what's the best CPA and bookkeeping firm in Australia? It gives some results, Sorry. But you click on AI mode, and then it goes through and it uses the Gemini backend to give us some information just for fun. I meant smaller accounting firms. Okay. Quickly, let's just see where that goes. Awesome. So if you made the list, Google loves you. Congratulations. And of course, this is using Gemini in the back end. So it's essentially having people not need to go to the actual websites. If you want to, you can over here, but it's giving you all the information you need here. So if you haven't seen it, it's a good little button to press if you need to just converse versus throw things into ChatGPT or Perplexity, but that's the update. All right, next, Gemini for Home. Not really super accountanty, but the reason I included it is because Siri is horrible and Google Assistant's no better, but Google's taking the first steps to putting Gemini to replace Google Assistant. So you can imagine how good that's going to be when it hits the car, but it's hitting Google Home in later October 2025. All right, into it. So they're Gen OS advancements. Now, this was part of a September update, but I just added it to the system because it really is the underlying reason why Intuit can release agents and more productive AI tools. So you might start seeing the words Gen OS starting to be talked about a lot. And to be honest, I hadn't heard very much about this. But I was on a call with an Intuit leader in the US last week, and that's all she could talk about. And I can tell how important it is to them as being the infrastructure of what helps their teams develop faster. And they've got a bunch of agents that have been released on this already, but a few that they're going to be releasing towards the end of the year. That again, this operating system is the reason why. Okay. In the US, Baker Tilly, Moss Adams, really big group that got together. They're starting to sell AI implementation to their customers. And the reason I include this is not because, oh, Baker Tilly and Moss Adams are doing it, but that a lot of companies are doing this, right? Accenture's doing it, McKinsey's doing it. Almost every top 25 firm in the US is doing it. The big four are. And as I kind of talk to some of the employees that are working there, it's really interesting to me because they see how much money is being spent on implementations. And for smaller firms like us, like some of the things that they're getting are less than what we would get if we're using ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot. So it just baffles me. But the common theme of almost all of these is that they're selling local LLMs. So whether that's an open source model from Meta or from DeepSeek or for some other custom trained LLMs, they also could be using OpenAI's open source model called GPT OSS. And it's interesting because like small firms, it makes sense for us to use the internet-based models. It's always getting better, a little bit more accessible, less IT costs behind the scenes. But for big enterprises, I think they feel more comfortable having the locally installed LLMs. And this could be something that we see a little bit more of. Actually, I was chatting with one of my Australian friends, Bo. You probably all know Bo. He sent me a video of this little 270-watt device that can kind of house your AI. It just reminds me of like Day of the Dead zombie stuff where like you're holding this computer and running around and it's your AI and it's the way that you operate. But it is definitely going to be something we see a lot more of. All right. OpenAI also released their big agent builder. They called it Agent Kit, and it has 3 specific things. Now, for the average accountant, we're probably not gonna use this as much as it is for the developers. So what are the 3 things? Well, one is the agent builder. So it's like a visual canvas for creating multi-agent workflows. If you use Zapier and Make, you know what the visual builder kind of looks like, or Lindy with the steps and the agents, or N8N. Those are all things that are visual canvases, and this is their very first version. Almost every single person that I've talked to or have seen online that has tried it is like, it's a baby Zapier. It's a baby N8N. It's not even close to what it could be or should be, but that's why it's beta. That's why it's the first version. It's their first crack at getting this to be more mainstream. The second thing that they released is this connector registry. So an easy way for people to add connections into applications using their authentications and their pre-built libraries to be able to make connections super, super easy. And the third product is what's called Chat Kit. So that is available now, and it's a toolkit for you to actually put these experiences in your own apps. And from an accounting lens, it's kind of interesting that they use the ramp examples. The ramp in the USA is a really popular issuer of temporary physical and virtual credit cards and expense management and bill pay. And they built their entire buyer agent on this and the workflows that extract information and attach it against POs, like all that kind of stuff. Rippling, another big one in the US, has a sales agent related to this built on this tool. So we are going to see it as part of products that we use as accountants. But again, 1 in 1,000 accountants is probably going to get into the nitty gritty of the technicalness of being able to use this. However, there was another release in ChatGPT called apps. Now, these apps are probably going to be used a little bit more once we get more connectors. So this is where I'll just show you the screen over here. Inside of ChatGPT, you're able to essentially call on an app, and then it'll use your authentication and your access to that app to be able to go through and use it. So whether that's to make a Spotify thing or find a home or make a booking somewhere, it's not too crazy to think that one of those connectors could be Intuit QuickBooks, could be your bank, or the tools you use every day. Okay, for the Microsoft folks in the group, you might have seen that back in August, they released the equals Copilot function inside of Excel. Now, there's a second upgrade in September where it became a little bit more usable. There's some funny memes going around LinkedIn where people were asking it to sum 3 numbers and it couldn't do it. So take that with a grain of salt. Like everything Microsoft, it's just starting off a little bit worse and a little bit slower. But what I found really funny is this. At the bottom of all of the terms of use for this, it says Microsoft advises against using it for any task requiring accuracy or reproducibility. Awesome. So it's really fun to make fun of it right now, but at least it's moving in the right direction. If you're on Google, you know, Google has their equals AI function that talks to Gemini. I'd say it's better. No, it is better, but they're all just growing up a little bit slower than what we're used to with Claude or ChatGPT. Okay, Anthropic. Anthropic is the company that makes Claude, which is a competitor to ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini. And they released a new model called Haiku 4.5. This is for the nerds, right? This is for the developers because it is essentially 1/3 the price of what most builders have been using for their agent work inside of Sonnet. And because it's 1/3 of the price, but has the same results, give or take, it means you'll probably see more agents doing more work because it's cheaper. This is where we're going to see it as accountants, right? So if you take the tools in our space, and I won't call it vinyl specifically, but I'm just first thing that came to my head. It's like if they're going to have agents kind of running in the back of their tools and it was expensive to do it, maybe they would have done it, you know, once a day or twice a day for a certain task. But as the price of these models that allow agents to run and do things gets really smart, what's stopping them from running 6 to 10 times a day now and getting the same results? So every hour, every 30 minutes, like that's the type of stuff that we're going to benefit from as accountants when these new models drop. And that's why sometimes it's nice to do this, because if there is a function that you see and you get a support ticket back from somebody and they give you something about cost, blah, 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 you can just kind of throw it back at them and be like, I know it's cheaper. Why aren't you using this? And that gets into a whole other debate. But I wouldn't go ahead and use this for stuff that's inside of Claude. So for example, in Claude, they have 3 different models. You could use Haiku, but again, if you're used to ChatGPT, this is like from a speed perspective, like using 4.0. Whereas Opus is like the big thinking model that takes a lot of time and a lot of credits. Sonnet's the one that is your daily driver, but for Haiku, it's typically used through the API with developers. Okay, cool. A lot of people over the last year have been talking about using dictation tools in the accounting space to interact with your computer. And no different. I've worked with Whisper Flow, and I ended up on Super Whisper because I really like this one. But Voice Ink, which is just a random one that works on a Mac. So if I lost anybody because they're not a Mac user, I'm sorry. But this is really cool. It has everything that you would expect these to have, with things like transcriptions, local dictation only, so it never goes up to the internet, personal dictionaries, context around what app it's on, an assistant, different modes. You get the idea. All for one lifetime price. So whether you pay 25, 39, or 49, it's a one-off thing and you never have to pay monthly again. So Mac users, really cool to do this on the lifetime plan. All right. Anthropic, Microsoft connector. So this is actually kind of interesting. I think you're going to see so much news over the next 6 months around everything integrating with everything. And Claude announced their Teams, OneDrive, and Outlook connector. I'll go back to Claude here for a second. So down here, you can see how they have, and they have always had the sort of Google integrations. But when you go to add a connector, you can add ones here. So all Anthropic did was now allow you to surface content from Word documents, team messages, Outlook emails. And I think why we're seeing this is because Microsoft has been so close to OpenAI for all these years. They've been fighting recently. So being able to create these connectors inside of Claude kind of gets them away from that all their eggs in one basket play. Now, keep in mind, this is for Teams and Enterprise Plan users only. So if you do have the paid account and you're wondering why you don't see it, it might be because you're not on a Teams plan. Okay. And consequently, which is kind of funny, Microsoft created these Google connectors, which means that if you're using Copilot and you want to search something inside of Google and you're part of this Windows Insiders group, you now can connect to Gmail, Google Drive, Google Calendar, Contacts. And they also, as part of that same release back on October 8th and 9th, gave Copilot the ability to go into OneDrive and Outlook. And I kind of put it like, will this finally fix Outlook search? Maybe. I honestly don't know. Now, this raises a bigger question, right? With all of these companies creating connections back and forth with each other, should we? And I bet you the majority of accountants are saying no. It's too dangerous. And you know what? This is like no other time in history. So just being able to trust that you can connect all of these data sources, you probably should be skeptical. I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that you shouldn't feel forced to have to turn them on, just like you shouldn't feel forced to have to AI everything in your firm. So the way that I've approached it is, if I think a connector is going to fundamentally give me better information during a workflow or an ask that I couldn't just get by using the AI in that platform, I'll turn on the connector, which is why I don't have a lot of connectors turned on, but there will be situations where it makes sense for specific firms. Yeah, on that note, ChatGPT also allowed for Notion and Linear for pro users to be able to connect those in to ChatGPT. So with Notion's new release of Notion AI and 3.0 and their agent work, most people love it. But if you wanted Notion to be integrated into your ChatGPT, because maybe you have a bunch of projects or custom GPTs, or this is where you want your team working or something, maybe having this connector is valuable to you. Again, I don't know, but it does exist. Okay, let's keep going. Slack and ChatGPT. This is a weird one. Again, more connectors. And the reason that they're connecting, I think, is because of press releases. Like, everybody just wants to show that they're working with OpenAI. So with Slack, they got a ChatGPT app right inside of Slack. And for OpenAI, they got a connector that brings in all the Slack context into chat, deep research, and agent mode. So again, I feel like this is the battle for where do you do work. And having all of these able to be connected in is nice. But at a certain point, you kind of have to pick where you want to work. And I know for me, like, some of my best AI work is done in ChatGPT projects. And I don't think I would want to do the work that I'm doing in those projects in Slack. So stuff like this is a little bit of noise. Okay. Deloitte, right after they had that pretty big mishap with using AI to create some fake sources recently, announced a partnership with Anthropic to push to its over 470,000 people across the global network. If you haven't used Claude very much, know that Claude is the safety AI, right? They are more open than others when it comes to their safety and their guardrails and how they're creating these protocols and sort of working for the safety of AI going forward. And maybe that's why that was there. I know it must have been obviously in the works for a long time, but it was just kind of funny how there was so much negative press and then boom, this just kind of happened. Okay. Agent skills. All of that stuff before this was, okay, connectors this, partnerships this, we get it. But we're seeing a fundamental change in how work is completed using AI with this new agent skills release. It's only been 3 days since this release, and we have no idea how this is going to change what the next few months looks like for us because it is so new. But let's talk about what it is first and why I think it's so important. So, one of the biggest problems with AI right now is the memory problem. Sure, you can connect your Microsoft environment, but every time you need to do something, it has to figure out what is relevant. You have to give it instructions on how to work. And like, this is why it's so important that really big companies have context engineering jobs and the ability to architect how to extract data from large data sets. Like, these models are really smart, but at the end of the day, how long can they remember what they know in order to act? And how can you have uniform instructions across large numbers of employees and groups of people? That's where agent skills comes in. So at a very simple level, agent skills teach Claude right now, which again, it's not just about Claude, because you can take these and give them over to other agents too, if you think about it. But right now it exists within Claude, and it teaches Claude through simple text files, they're called markdown files, how to do something, and it gives it the skills to do that. For example, you could have an Excel skill that you give Claude, right? And just to show you kind of what we mean here, if we go into settings and click on capabilities, I think it's at the bottom, here it is. So skills, you can come in here and upload skills, right? So here's examples, right? You could have something about design, brand guidelines, etc. for your company. But say you uploaded a skill for Excel, the way that you like your tabs to be used, example files, the fact that you like index match more than VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP more than index match. You get the idea. Like, you can tell it this, it can have it, and every time you talk about Excel, it'll grab those skills and then use them. Board reporting, you could have your templates for how to do board reports, and you could have the structure and where you get the data and all that important stuff. And then when you're talking about getting board reports and then using Excel to grab them, you can stack those skills to get something that's incredibly narrow and based on what you need. Needed to go outside? Well, maybe the board reporting skills need to use the branding skill that you created. You can stack that on as well. So we're getting to this point where we recognize that these models are so smart. They have the capability to be smart for you too. And it's this implementation phase, but using things like skills that are going to make the user experience so much more enjoyable because it's going to get it right more. Now, right now, just to make this more practical, I have a ChatGPT project that I use for sales. And in its instructions and knowledge, I have what could be skills in there. And I'm actually going to try to replicate those with different skills inside of Claude and run them side by side to kind of see how they'll react and which one will be better. And I have a feeling that agent skills are going to get me further than where the project is because of how specific it is and how much information I can put in those skills. But I don't know yet. We'll see. But I think it's going to be a really big thing. If you've noticed your ChatGPT getting a little bit smarter at remembering what's happening, it's because in October, They're now prioritizing more recent memories and interactions than all the memories like they were before. It also has some auto capabilities so that it avoids having memory full error message. It also talks about how often you talk about a topic, which is kind of nice. So you'll probably just see small enhancements, but that's why. There's all kinds of funding going on in the AI accounting space, like this one. Comet is now free. Again, it was originally launched to just the $200 a month plans, but if you want to get into trying out agentic browser experiences where you give it a command and then you watch it go on the browser, you can do that in Comet. Take with that the security warnings that it talks about with prompt injections. And again, I'd probably test it out on some not so serious things and kind of watching as it goes. I don't use it for that reason. I've had some pretty lackluster experiences with it. If you've ever wanted to try it, it's now free and you can go do that. Ignition launched their AI-powered pricing insights. So you get 3 for free. It's for Australian and US customers only. It kind of shows the ranges of what things are at. Over here, you can kind of see like from your service where you benchmarked against others. And from there, gives you some suggestions and just gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling. I've never been a huge fan of benchmarks and stuff like that, but I know a lot of people are. So if this is something that you're super interested in, then you get that. Okay. Carbon bought Ader. It's all over the news. Really cool. Really great for Ader, really great for Carbon. Excited to see what that looks like in practice. For the nerdy nerds in the group, Carbon released earlier this year this new endpoint on their API that allows other accounting apps to get access to the task list and then have those statuses flow back and forth between them automatically. And Ader was one of those, and there's all kinds of other ones. But it is nice to see this because this will accelerate their ability to get more accounting specific data inside of Carbon, which was missing before. To that note, Keeper, a very bookkeeping and like workflow focused tool, created this executive summary, sort of like what Ader had inside for their sort of $50 a month clients, only for QuickBooks Online. So it drafts really high level narratives over the last 12 months, including vendors' specific level spend and year over year comparisons. It auto generates summary notes that highlight the trends, variances, and areas to watch. Again, this is going to be par for the course, I think, for everything. I would expect this to be part of QuickBooks 2 eventually. It's going to be in everything. So the devil's in the details in terms of how accurate it's going to be. But if you've been sleeping on Keeper for a while because it didn't have stuff like this, it did just release it this October. I've got a whole bunch of stuff from Zapier. AI by Zapier got all the GPT-5 Pro support stuff. Cognito Forms got a new search. DocuSign got a whole bunch of triggers for their new IAM plans. Dropbox got a new trigger for some shared folders that are created. If you're a big Zapier user, you know that the ability to import CSVs but respect the null values was a big problem before. Now it's not. They fixed that, so that's nice. Google AI Studio got a nice connector, so you can start creating images using Nano Banana inside of Zapier, which is neat. Google Docs got a whole bunch of triggers and actions. Excel got a whole bunch with adding rows and renaming worksheets and more searches. Office 365 got a whole bunch of stuff for finding emails better. Again, I can't believe some of this stuff didn't exist before, but it is nice to see so many more of these details being released because Zapier knows that there's other up and coming tools like Lindy and like String.com and things that are built into Microsoft that are eventually going to get people's attention. So they kind of have to go fast here. In Microsoft, they also got another agent mode for Office apps and an Office agent in Copilot chat. So this is one that is kind of techy, but it is kind of interesting. So you now can go into the labs and the add-ons inside of Excel and enable agent mode, but it's only available in that one Excel file, and it can't talk to other files for the agent. So if you need to bring in other information, you have to kind of bring that into the sheet and then have the agent use it. So it's very, very bare bones right now. But if you were curious if you can use agents inside of your Excel files locally, you can through enabling that inside of Labs. And again, in Copilot chat, you can create PowerPoint presentations and Word documents now. That was released in September. Okay, given we have 15 minutes left, Let's focus on some more of the core tools and maybe skip through some of the smaller stuff here. So, instant checkout with OpenAI, Walmart, Shopify, we can skip that. Claude and Slack, again, all these connectors might be fine, a little bit of a noise. Let's move on. Maximore funding, again, there's so many of these tools coming out that are sitting in between ERPs and accounting systems that are going to automate everything. I don't know which one's going to land. I haven't figured out which one to use for our firm either. I think this is one of those wait and see a little bit until there's a reason to switch off of something that you're already on. And if you really think about it, a lot of these tools are doing a lot of the same things: contract management, EP matching, applying payments, extracting data from documents, doing what Dext is doing, renaming files, reading tax documents. I know it's a lot of what we do as accountants, but for some reason, I'm really bullish on the big project management systems getting it right. And I know there's going to be some great tools that pop up, but with so much change happening with models and with the project management systems themselves, I don't know. I'm not in that mood right now to switch things up in such a massive way that it disrupts the entire company just yet. Okay. OpenAI Pulse. If you pay the $200 a month, you get this little update that comes in to your phone, and you can see updates on what you've been talking about with ChatGPT, and it gives you some news and some insights. I don't use it very often. I'll probably look at it every 3 or 4 days. And it's probably nothing that isn't already on your LinkedIn feed, to be honest. In Intuit News, they did have this international app program confirmation that on November 3rd, it's going live. The really short answer is that we're getting access to a few more endpoints. Actually, let's take a look. Okay, in terms of the new APIs that this program gets access to, those are the projects API, the custom fields, sales tax, payroll, and inventory adjustments. So that really should make a difference in a lot of the tools we use, but it also might mean that we might see some price increases from our apps because of this. Oh, this is a good one. AI inside of Google Sheets. So I think this is a little bit better than what you're seeing in Excel right now, only because in September, that equals AI formula inside of Google Sheets got a bit of an upgrade, and it added like 20 other functions that it can handle. Now, generally speaking, those AI formulas in Excel and Google Sheets are pretty limiting. It can do classifications, and it can extract information for addresses if you've got some dirty data. But let's see if this, there we go. Here's all the things that was recently added in September to that equals AI function that it couldn't do before September. Things like adding a dropdown, creating a filter, using dimensions, setting formatting. Pretty crazy. You couldn't do that before. But anyway, it's nice to see that upgrade. Oh, Databricks. I want to spend so much time on this, but I can't. Databricks is what I wish I had in my firm, but can't afford it. It seems like it's for the big firms. And if you haven't heard of Databricks, in theory, it's really good. So think about needing to build a agent or a task or a workflow that creates sort of ephemeral databases, ephemeral agents that just run one time, get something, and then delete the database or not use it anymore. Like in a normal development environment, you build all these infrastructures and you wait on passwords and provisioning from the development teams to get your temporary workspace up to do an audit thing. Like in Databricks, they just let that happen, and the agents go spin up their own databases and they complete tasks. And theoretically, it's really cool. But I think what I'm seeing when I talk to firms that work in those like 10,000 person and above firms is that development teams of those firms are what's holding it back, not necessarily the technology. So really cool stuff happening. And of course, with that partnership and that big money, there's going to be more available to Databricks. I just wish it was accessible for smaller firms. To that end, I wonder if you're going to see big firms create tools that they then sell to smaller firms in hopes of purchasing them or getting in on the M&A activity and seeing what it's like to give them access to. I don't know, but there might be something there. Google Chrome, yes. Again, we're going to see a lot more of this agentic work inside of Chrome. Claude for Chrome was released. They're having Gemini now as a way to talk to your Chrome browser. Not a lot of crazy use cases just yet, but again, it's rolling out. A whole bunch of Intuit changes that occurred that are pretty important for things like addresses. So imagine you're building some automations in Make or N8N or Zapier, or you've got these scripts running in Power Automate or whatever. Three of the big changes here, I'll bring up the sheet. The first one has to do with addresses. Here we go. So it's getting rid of the longitude and latitude fields and giving you just regular address fields. So if you had your old app built on longitude and latitude, and that's how you dealt with addresses, you can't use that anymore. The limits that you have in your subscription for classes and departments now transferred to the API. They weren't there before. They changed the query operation. So if you were like trying to get something with all the accounts between a range or greater than a certain number, you can't do that anymore, right? They're only allowing the equals sign, which might be harder for people to use. I'm curious why that one came through, but I guess we'll see. And before, there was some weird things where you could create parent and child accounts that shouldn't be able to be created through the API. Now that's been fixed. Okay, that was fun. Oh, that's a big one. OpenAI shared projects. So projects, good. GPTs, meh. So sharing projects is open now to the business accounts, used to be called Teams accounts in OpenAI. And again, it's only for your org. So before, if you were just loving having the evolution of a project get better because it learns over multiple chats, which custom GPTs don't, now you can share that with people in your organization. Awesome, right? No more news there. We could go into the difference between projects and GPTs, but I fear we are running out of time a little bit. Actually, I just brought this up inside of LinkedIn. If you're not connected on LinkedIn, it would be nice to connect. But I put together this comparison chart of all the differences between custom GPTs and projects, and then over the span of a couple minutes, just kind of go through each single one of them. And there's 9 dimensions it goes through, and like where you would use a GPT versus where you would use a project. Cool. And that was from about 3 weeks ago. If you just go through the videos, I do daily videos. So about 15 videos ago. Cool. For Countable, a Canadian work paper solution that is using AI to create worksheets and go into your accounting system and help prepare them. That's kind of cool. Free tax filing for a company in the US called Instead, just kind of challenging how tax is being sold and offered. Workday's got a whole bunch of agents for close, auditing, payroll, planning. Honestly, if you're using some of these and they're incredible, I'd love to hear from you, because most people that I chat with are lukewarm to like about them. So I'd love to meet some people that are stoked that this is working really well. Flowcast, there's like a month-end close company, launched a bunch of agents. So one of the cool ones is this AI detection thing that continuously monitors your GL and then flags errors. That could be helpful. Some variance analysis, you get the idea. Aleph, oh, I wish we had a lot more time. Aleph is pretty cool because what it does is it connects to your data through Google Sheets, its own app, or Excel, and then you can bring it in, right? So it talks to QuickBooks, it talks to databases, it talks to CRMs, and then you just, in natural language, ask it to build out the sheet, and then it does it. It's worth a click. Okay, so something like this, and then you go down and you can see how, this is the app that it has itself. And then here in Google Sheets, you can see how it has a side connector and it can pull data in from different systems. And then my favorite here, it goes into an accounting system, asks it to, show me the P&L by account, include money and percentages month over month, and then it will go and create the spreadsheet with all of the dynamic data. So I kind of like this one. This is kind of cool. I wish I could get my hands on it to try it, but from the demo, it looks pretty good. So again, if you've had any experience with this one, please share in the chat. It would be really cool to hear about that. Big company buys little company. Cool. It's only 2 years old. Good for those people. Another person getting a whole bunch of money for real-time reconciliations. Notion has their agents and their new versions. Again, just so much development. It's really hard to keep your head around it. But if you're on the techier side, this new version has row permissions. And that has been something that has been lacking for a really long time. So it's cool to see them listening to the automation people and the tech people to try to get that setting available to help protect the integrity of some specific rows in databases. OpenAI toggles thinking time. This is kind of cool. If you're running an automation in Make or Zapier or N8N or anything else, In the API settings, you're able to tell it to think longer or shorter instead of just creating these really long delays. So really nice of them to set that up in September. Oh, and it also got really good at web searching in September. So if you noticed that it searches the web better and hallucinates less, it was all because they were building it to be able to do shopping a little bit better. So the byproduct of that is just an entirely better search experience. Again, for the nerds, we've got a brand new coding model that an infrastructure that kind of goes up against Claude Code. And a lot of people like it. And you can start it on one device, talk to it on your phone when you walk away, it can run for 7 hours plus. Like, it's pretty good. So again, we're going to see a lot more agent use and competition. Oh, Tabs is this one that allows you to ingest thousands of contracts, and it will hook it up to Plaid and have human in the loop stuff with Slack to ask you questions and create invoices and apply payments and remind you and let you converse with all the contracts. So good on them. Replit is a vibe coding tool that a lot of accountants are getting into to build tools for their firm. It got a huge upgrade in September with Agent 3, where now they can generate other agents inside of their workflows. There's autonomous testing now for security. They're faster. You can use more models. Anyway, very good. Some smaller updates here with Microsoft and Grant Thornton getting into creating custom models for their team. ADP allowing HR managers to ask things like, how are our overtime costs trending? Again, all this stuff is going to become more mainstream in the tools where we can converse and have it do some agentic work. Oh, OpenAI, this is a really good one. If you feel like you're at a good point in a conversation and you need to take it in a few different directions, you can branch the conversations now. So, for example, if you are curious at what time a certain Intuit conference is broadcasting a recording of yours, and you're wondering what time that would be in Toronto so that you know it's going to be on a plane, you can take it here. Now you can see it. But if you wanted to take this entire conversation down a different route than just keeping it going here, you can click on this button and then branch a new chat. And what that does is it opens it up in a new window. It leaves the other one over here. And now you can continue on. Super, super helpful versus increasing that context window and possibly losing out on some of the quality responses. Claude got a whole bunch of memory in September, which is nice. And it also got the ability to create Excel files and PowerPoints. Man, we're just flying through this stuff. Until the end of the year, if you want Perplexity Pro for free and you have a PayPal account, you can set up a new account in Perplexity and then link your PayPal account to it. There's a caveat that if your PayPal address is equal to your existing Perplexity address, they won't let you do that kind of stuff, but there's ways around this. If you need the link, just Google it and it'll pop up. Saves you about $200 to $240 a year. Otherwise, that's all the updates. Now, as much fun as the news section of this all is, I wanted to talk really quickly about all this new ChatGPT thinking model stuff. Now, if you're in here and you're wondering, hey, why am I not getting what I expect? It could be because you have this thing set to auto. So before you start any chat where you need it to be accurate, it's important to you, don't use auto. It's not good enough right now, and it will not give you consistent results. Instant, almost never. We're so used to getting information back and then clarifying. Just spend the time waiting for it to process, and you'll get a way better answer just by having a little bit of patience. To that end, for Thinking Mini, that question earlier about the broadcast time and where the conversions are, I use Thinking Mini for that. But for 98% of every other chat that I have inside of ChatGPT, I use the thinking option. And then under extended thinking, I'm selecting between options that are available to me. Now, because I'm on the $200 a month plan, I have 4 options. But if you're on the regular plan or business plan, you might just see standard or extended. So financial analysis, really complicated spreadsheet formula, some FP&A work, spreadsheet work. Pick the highest option that you can have extended or heavy, and you will absolutely see better results. Okay, so with that, thank you. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Go add me. If you want to play around with some of this stuff and talk to other accountants, Automation Town has like 400 other accountants in there. Yes, they're mostly North American, but there are some people from Australia and New Zealand in there sharing what they're up to as well. And please, if you do have other information related to some of these tools that are working really well, please send me a message on LinkedIn. It would be awesome to hear some positive experiences with some of these tools. Have a fantastic rest of the conference. It was great to meet you, even though this is recorded. Let's connect on LinkedIn. See you later.